Hey guys, at this point in the course, I want to congratulate you for sticking with it through some of the more difficult and challenging assignments that you will have in this course. And the reason why I say more difficult and more challenging is because up to this point, you have had to really hone in and focus on some of the more technical aspects of underground cave photography and lighting. I remember back when I was a teenager and I was learning how to play the guitar, and as I was learning, the instructor that I had, he'd give me these scales to practice, and I would go home and I would start practicing the scale, and I'd be like, this is ridiculously boring. Like I hate this. I want to play Iron Maiden. I want to play Megadeth. And these scales don't sound like metal. And so, you know what? I'm just going to go get a guitar magazine. I'm going to get the tablature for this Megadeth song that I want to work on. And then I would sit there and I would go through it. And I was really sloppy. And I'd play and I'd be like, yeah, those notes sound exactly like this song. This is so cool. And so I would practice these riffs of Megadeth and do it really sloppy. And in the end, like I would listen to, I'd listen to the song. I would see, Marty Friedman up there playing the guitar and be like, how does he do that without making mistakes? Like I'm all over the place and it's so sloppy. And, I just ended up being a sloppy guitarist. And later down the road, I had a friend that he was a music major, and he said, and I said, how in the world do you like get up there and play flawlessly without making mistakes? And he said, well, the secret is you just don't ever make mistakes. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he says, well, when you have to do this tedious, monotonous process of practicing scales, you don't make mistakes. So you hit every note exactly the way that note needs to be hit. And if that takes you 5 minutes to play a single scale because you're focusing your finger, okay, I gotta make sure I'm on the right note and I pluck exactly the right string. And now I need to do the next note and I pluck the next string. That's what you do. And at first it takes forever, but then the more you practice, the more you're able to make that scale flow, and then you can go faster and faster and faster to the point where you're blasting through the scale, not making a single mistake, and mastering that scale then translates directly over into mainstream music, which you can then pull off, without a hitch. So that principle applies to basically just about anything you can learn out there. If you really want to master it, you need to hone in on that technical stuff first, and then once you spend the time and the energy and go through the struggle of doing that, you become so much more empowered at creating incredible images or doing whatever it is you're doing. It just serves you down the road when you want to be creative and you have this vision underground that you want to create. I mean, you can do it like that because you've mastered the technical stuff. At this point, we are now in the course going to be diving into some of the more creative and aesthetic parts of cave photography. So, with that said, before we jump into the lighting components, I want to go through composition underground. How do you arrange a really good composition underground? I mean, how do you do that? Composition is basically the arrangement of objects in the frame. And if you're kind of new to photography, or you haven't really dove into composition, that's why I give you the minimalist basic cave photographer course. In that course, there is a very in-depth lesson on composition and the principles of composition. It'll go through all of those, and really principles of composition apply above ground and they apply underground, regardless. So we're not going to go into the principles of composition here in this lesson, but I would encourage you to watch that if you haven't checked it out yet. We're going to talk about how do you arrange objects and your shot in total darkness. So let me give you some ideas of what I do when I'm underground and how I make that work. So first of all, when I go underground, I will, get my camera, I'm walking through the passage, and as people are shining their lights around, maybe I see something like, ooh, right in here is really cool, and this is going to be a really great shot. So I'll have, I'll hold my camera up and kind of look through the viewfinder and just have someone shine the light around. And I might look and say, oh, I really like the flowstone. I want the flowstone over here. And then in the background, I'm going to have, a caver walking through. So I'll hold it up and just have them shine their light around so I can see if I can fit it in the frame. And then I'll get ready to take the shot. Or maybe I look and I see these stalactites hanging down. I'm like, ooh, what if I had those in the top of the frame here? And then down in the middle, I want this caver kind of like walking right at me in the background. So I go ahead and frame it to see if it's going to fit with the focal length of my lens, see if that's going to fit in the frame, shine the light down there, make sure I can fit it in there. I don't know yet if it's going to look really good, but I get a general sense of what I can fit in the frame and what I can't. Once I have that ready, and I think I'm ready to do the shot, I'll set it up and have somebody shine a light as bright as possible on my areas of critical focus that that are there in the frame. And what I'll do is they shine their light, like let's say it's on some stalactites and a caver in the background, have them shine the light on the stalactites, and then I'll switch from the viewfinder to the LCD display on the back. And a lot of times when you're in live view on your camera and you've got the LCD, you can zoom in and out of the view that you're seeing. So I zoom in as far as I can go, and then I make sure that the focus is spot on. It's really hard to see when you're looking through the viewfinder whether you're focused, especially when the light's dim. But if you can get somebody to shine the light really bright on the subject, and then you can kind of dial in that focus and make sure the critical focus is there, you can really nail it well. And then I'll check some of the other areas like the caver walking through. Same thing, shine a really bright light right down on that caver. I'll check the focus. Once we're good, I know I can hold it there on the tripod, or if I'm handheld, I'm not going to move it around too much. Just keep it right there. And I'm ready to do the shot. Now the next phase is to, actually do the shot. So I'll get my lights set up, fire them off, and then I'll take a look at the viewfinder in the back, or the LCD screen, and just see if the shot is the way I wanted it. Because with composition is more than just objects. It's also light. Because, maybe I've arranged the stalactites up here and the caver down here, but when the flash fire off, even though that composition of objects is good, maybe I get this weird long shadow that's kind of cutting through my shot that draws your eye right off of the, right off of the frame. So at that point, I make some adjustments. I tweak the light. Maybe I need to shift my camera down or up a little bit to accommodate those objects a little bit better, and I'll try again. And I'll do the same thing, make some more adjustments, fire the shot, look at the picture on the back of the frame. If it looks good, we move on. If not, make a few more tweaks, and that's kind of the process of composing underground. Now, I want to show you some examples of sort of this process and how making those subtle changes when you're shooting underground can really impact your composition. So let's take a look at a couple of examples, and then we'll come back and I'm going to talk about a few more things that you need to be aware of when it comes to composition underground. All right, so here we are now over in Lightroom, and what I'd like to do here in Lightroom is I want to show you the raw images from a recent shoot and sort of walk you through the compositional process that I went through as I created these images. So here in this first shot, we came into this cave, and I took a look at the room, and I'm like, wow, this is phenomenal. So I kind of wandered around a little bit, got a sense of maybe where I wanted to start shooting, set up the camera, and just had some friends fire off the flashes, down there, just so I get a sense of what this looked like overall. So I tried that. I had them fire it off again and slightly changed my composition. So got this shot where I've lifted it up just slightly. You'll notice I changed my position a little bit, move a little closer, and this is what I get. So I think about it for a minute, and I say, I really like that first shot a little bit more, and it would be great to put some people down in there. So we went ahead and set up the flashes, and had my friends get down into position and shot this shot. Now when I look at it, I realized that this flash was not completely hidden, something that I couldn't tell before. So you can see down here in the lower part of the camera, I'm getting a bright light from that flash. So that means that I then need to have them make a slight position change in the flash, and maybe I shift my position, and we go ahead and reshoot. Now this time, shift the camera again just a little bit to see what it looks like as I put these stalactites and columns over here in the left to shift my composition. And then I'm working again with the folks that are walking through the shot. Again, we take another slight shift in my position and have them walk through the scenario again. And it's okay, but I think that last shot is a little bit better because they're a little too close to the bottom of the frame here for me. And then last of all, well, actually not quite last of all, but I try a vertical shot to see if that's working a little bit better. And, you know, it's okay, but I like the horizontal a lot better. So at this point, I think I've got a good shot back here in this middle shot that I did. I'm really liking that one. So I'm going to keep that, but I don't want to completely limit myself. I mean, who knows? There may be something else in this room that could be really powerful. So I walk over a few feet and shoot this one, trying to use the columns to frame my subjects down below. But once I fire off the flash, I realize this stalagmite is jabbing my friend up the nose, and then this light is really distracting there in the shot. So we try maybe a subtle adjustment. I shift my position again a little bit more, and you know, it's still just not doing it for me. I'm not really liking the arrangement of these objects. The light's really hot there, which I could easily fix by shifting the flash. Then I've got another flash problem here, and I'm just looking at the overall composition and where my subjects are at, and just thinking, you know, let's just bag it at this point. So we walk out and we move on. I feel like I've got the shot that I really wanted in this room. Let me show you another example here. I'm going to move down this series of shots, and let's go to, let's see, this one here. So this room we walk into, and there's some really interesting things going on. So I move back in the corner, and up to this point, you know, I've had them kind of shine their light around. I've walked, and I've found this place in the room that I want to, you know, start from. So I try a couple of variations. We fire the flashes here. I change it from a horizontal to a vertical. Is that working? Is it not? We go back to the horizontal, and I'm really starting to like what's going on. So play with a few more compositions in that same place, firing off the flash to see what it's going to look like. And I'm really kind of leaning towards that horizontal shot. So let's get our people in there. Go ahead and stick them in, fire off the flash, because I think this is going to be great. And then I look at it and I'm like, oh, wow, he's got a big giant stalactite booger coming out of his nose. So we need to do something about that. So I go ahead and shift my position a little bit to see if moving to the right a little bit will correct it. Still, you know, not quite doing it. Let's try a couple of other variations. Yeah, you know, it's really not working. So I shift the position of my subject and, you know, try it with just one person in the shot instead of two. So have him sit there and, you know, just hanging out like he's taking a rest, going through the cave. Play with a couple of variations, the horizontal, the vertical. What if we compose it with, instead of the stalactites in the ceiling, we get some of this interesting stuff going on the ground. Not really a huge fan of it. I really like where he's sitting. I like the composition and the layout of that. But, you know, this whole foreground thing on the bottom is not working super well. It's okay, not bad, but I think I can do better. So we try with some different compositions from different angles, moving around, firing the flash, what's working, what's not, and until we find that sweet spot. So that with the mammillaries on the ceiling, I mean, it's okay, but I'm still feeling like there's something better back where I started originally. So we'll try a few more things, having him change his position. And in just a second, we're going to talk more about working with people underground. But I finally slide back to, you know, that position where I originally started with a slight adjustment in that composition. And it's okay, but this hot spot here in the middle is kind of bothering me. And two people, you know, that's just not working out super well. So try a few other things with the two in there. Shifting my camera just slightly because, again, those subtle changes can make a huge difference. And as I'm shooting, I'm thinking, you know, like something is just not quite working here. And what I decide is it's that having those two individuals in there, I'm liking the composition, but the two people just not working. It's making it a little bit unbalanced. Now again, if you're not familiar with balance, not familiar with framing, go back to that minimalist basic photographer course. We talk a lot about that. So finally I nail it in. I'm really, really liking this shot. But I'll try a couple of other variations, just to be sure. So we do a few last shots because those subtle shifts in composition may make or break the shot. And finally, at this point, I feel like I've got a couple of really good shots in there. I think we can move on to the next area. So hopefully that gives you a sense of sort of how I go about approaching composition underground. It requires a lot of subtle adjustments and playing with different things. But ultimately, if you do that, if you play around and you experiment and you have fun, you're going to walk away with a really great composition. So now that we've talked a little bit about the arrangement of objects in your photograph, this idea of composition, I want to talk a little bit about working with people underground. And the reason why is because what that person is doing in the shot will make or break the shot. Even though that person may be a small part of the shot or a big part, as human beings, we look at a photograph and we want to connect with what's familiar. And what is familiar is that person going through the shot. So if that person is doing something weird or awkward, that's going to really impact how we feel about the photograph. For example, if you look at a shot and there's this beautiful formation over here and the caver is going, that's going to seem totally contrived and not natural at all. We want something to be so natural that you look at the shot and you just say, yeah, that feels like, they just lifted the camera. There was a moment that someone was just happened to be traveling through the cave. The caver was sitting there doing something that they naturally do underground. And, it doesn't jar us at all. So how we work with people is absolutely critical underground. So let me give you a few tips, a few pointers as to how you might work with people to make it look natural. So one of the things that I will do when working underground, and sometimes this works well and sometimes it doesn't. You just have to experiment with it. But one thing that I'll do is maybe I'll set up a shot. And let's go back to that example. We've got these beautiful stalactites up here, and in the background we've got our caver. Now you don't want the caver to just be standing there, holding a flash firing, because that doesn't look super natural and it's a bit jarring. So what you can do is maybe have this person travel through the cave. Now, because it's total darkness, it's going to be hard for them to walk through the cave unless they've got their light on. If they've got their light on, it might leave a streak. So how do you do that? How do you make them walk through the cave without tripping and falling on their rear or having this light streak? Well, what you can do, have them turn off their light or put it on a really, really dim setting and have a little range where they walk. So maybe they just take one step back, and when you yell fire, and maybe you have to say, ready, go, and then fire. To say go is when you start walking, fire is when you fire the flash. And in that time, they just take one step. So I get the camera set up, I yell go, the person takes a step, and as I'm doing that, I say fire, and the shutter's open, and we go ahead and we grab the shot. And that way, they're not just standing there, but they're actually moving. And maybe it's 2 steps or 3 steps, whatever you feel is safe for them to do. But that natural movement is going to look more natural than saying, okay, I want you to put 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and now keep that balance. Well, that's not really very natural. They're going to be kind of awkward as they're standing there trying to maintain their balance. So have them move just a little bit through the cave and then work on timing that so you can get them in the place they need to be when that flash fires off. Take a little practice. You may have to try it a few times in order to get it, but definitely worth doing that. Another thing that you can do is, let's say that there's not really a lot of space to walk and they're framed sort of like I'm framed here. So you got the formations maybe over on this side of the frame, and you're going to have the cavers move through the shot like this. Well, you can't really have them walk because they may walk right out of the frame. So maybe what you might do is just have them put their backpack on or whatever they've got and just have them sort of rock back and forth in the shot. Instead of just standing here snapping the picture, have them move, because maybe like right here as they're looking around, that might look really cool. Or maybe they just glance over their shoulder as they're moving through and they check out the formation, whether it's over here or over there. So have them just rock back and forth. Try several shots. It may take 5, 10, 15 shots before you nail the perfect position where it looks like, they're moving naturally through the cave. So those are some things that you can try. Now, one other thing that you may do that I want to bring up. So let's say that it's, you've got a shot and you need somebody to just kind of be in a specific place and not really move a lot, but you want it to look natural. Well, what can you have them do? Instead of just sitting there like this, waiting for the shot, why not have them pull out a survey book and sketch? Or what if they're digging through their bag or something like that? They've sat down to take a rest and they're just pulling some things out. Maybe they're grabbing their food or whatever out of their bag. Probably don't want them eating it because all those awkward shots of you that exist out there from some party where you've got something in your mouth and you got this weird look on your face. Probably don't want to do that. But if they're pulling stuff out of their bag, that's going to look natural. So you can try that. You can try, maybe they're holding a survey instrument and looking through and doing a measurement, or they've got a disto and they're measuring that. Give them something to do while they're sitting in that spot to make it look a little more natural. All right. Hopefully that gives you some ideas as we start to review the next lighting assignment and give you some really cool challenges underground. So as we do that, I want you to take the concepts you've learned here and see if you can create some images that are nicely composed and where the person in the shot looks natural and doesn't look forced in the shot. That's going to become very important to create some powerful images.